Hello everybody and welcome to the table. We have an interesting knife here today. This is the Civivi that wasn't. And so I kind of have to explain that because this knife was made by Civivi, but it was never released by Civivi. It has kind of an interesting short history behind it. So first we can take a look at the knife itself and see what do we have here. So as you can tell, this has some green micarta handles. We have a belt cutter, a glass breaker, and a flipper blade on this knife. And so the specs of this knife, let me kind of show you the overall size here. So on the ruler, we can see that the overall blade length here is coming in pretty long. We can see we are well over 3.5 inches. So it's like 3 3/4 inches long or so. Overall length 8 1/4 inches, so it's a full-size pocket knife, and it was manufactured by Civivi, but for whatever reason they decided not to release it. So even to this day, if you go to Knife Center's website, you can see a product page with this knife listed on it. So it was originally referred to as the Civivi, the RIP Rescue. And so they manufactured this knife. There was, again, an entry on Knife Center, but they never released it as far as I can tell. And so how did this knife see the light of day? How do I have one here? So a couple of months ago, Blade HQ, day after Christmas sale, they released a promotion. They said, hey, if you spend $100 with us, we're going to throw in a free knife with your order. And so they showed pictures of this knife right here. Some people immediately recognized it, most people didn't, but it had 3 different flavors. So we have the green micarta scales. There was a version with, I think it was a brown micarta, as well as a jade G10. One of the variants even had a Damascus blade. So what people did is you bought spend $100 on Blade HQ, they send you a knife, one of the 3 random variants. And so we get this knife in hand, and you'll notice there are no Civivi markings on the knife at all. In fact, Blade HQ calls this knife the Tantrum. That's their model name they're calling it. But absolutely no markings on the knife at all, although we do have a telltale sign. This is a Civivi knife. If you look really closely here on the blade, I don't know if that'll even get picked up. It's very small text. Ooh, with the lighting here, you're not going to see it. But right there at the base of the blade, you can see the blade steel markings. This is a 9CR18 MOV. And if you're familiar with Civivi at all, you know that's their font. That is how they mark their blades, with very, very tiny text right at the base of the blade. And so there is no Civivi marking on the blade anywhere else. Normally it's on the pivot, and as we can see, this compared to the picture from Knife Center, they actually went ahead and replaced all of the Civivi custom pivots with basic hardware. So that's super interesting that they went through all this effort to create a knife, to make a run of it, and then to never bring it to market. And so I'm guessing they sold over their stock to Blade HQ, and Blade HQ, without having a brand name, they can't really sell it for full price. Therefore, they gave it away in their promotion. And so now this knife in hand is actually really well built. As you would expect from Civivi, the action is incredible. It does run on bearings, flipper blade. There is the belt cutter on it. And I know what most people think. They see belt cutter, and my first gut instinct is, hey, that's a cheap gas station knife. Because generally you see belt cutters on cheap gas station knives. But this one right here, again, it's a belt cutter, glass breaker, but Civivi, of course, is going for something slightly higher end. Maybe they realized that in this market that the belt cutter does kind of lessen the quality of a knife, so to speak, in the eyes of the buyer. Maybe that's why they never actually released it under the Civivi name, because quality-wise, it is every bit the same quality as any other Civivi knife, I would say. We have the deep carry pocket clip, and that looks to be reversible as well. We do have the skeletonization in the frame. If you look in there, you'll see there are the holes drilled out of that steel frame to help with the lightweight. So in total, this knife weighs in at about 3.5 ounces. So it is not a heavyweight knife by any means, despite its, larger size. The blade is razor sharp. I have carried and used it. No complaints there with the 9CR18. And this has a black wash coating, as you can tell. And so a lot of people got these knives for free, so to speak, from Blade HQ. And people are questioning, where did this knife come from? And so really, it's so interesting to figure out, why would Civivi create this run of knife and then never bother to release it? Was something wrong with it? Again, my number one guess is just that the belt cutter and so on kind of cheapens this design, but it's designed as a rescue knife. That was the name, the rescue knife from Civivi. So why would they, purposely go against that? It's kind of strange, kind of odd. And the fact that it was never really sold at full price or any price at all, because you can imagine when this knife, came out to retail, it'd probably be $60, $70 easily, being a higher end Civivi knife, especially if you got the version with the Damascus blade. But again, they didn't sell it. So that's a good question. So that's what I pose to all of you out there. Why do you think Civivi would go through the effort of making a run of this knife? They probably didn't make too many of them, because I will say, when Blade HQ had their offer, spend $100, get a knife free, within one day they were gone. They were sold out. And I just so lucked out, I was about to spend money at Blade HQ anyway, and so I was able to make that purchase within that time frame. But if you waited too long, you didn't get one of these. So I imagine they made a small run of these knives and they were good to go. And all Blade HQ had to do, or all Civivi had to do, was pop out that pivot and replace it with a generic one, which I'm glad they did. And this knife is ready for sale as the Tantrum. And so the Tantrum, what brand? Who knows? There's no brand name to it. So even the current Blade HQ listing, it gives you all kinds of description about the knife, but no real background information. And it's just really the eagle-eyed sleuths out there on Instagram who figured out the connection that, hey, this looks like a Civivi that was never released. What gives? So kind of a cool little provenance behind this knife. You either got one or you didn't. I imagine maybe they'll eventually find their way to the secondary market, but it's not really a super high value collectible or anything, but it is a nice curio to pick up, and it works and functions just as well as any other Civivi with that really nice deep carry clip. Just really, really nice build quality, build construction. So it does not disappoint in that regard. So that being said, tell me what you think. Was this the Civivi RIP Rescue? Is it the Tantrum? Where do you think this knife came from? And why would Civivi produce it and then never release it? I guess that's the big question here. Hope you all enjoyed this story and want to help me solve this mystery. But have a nice day, everyone, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.